This is 6-time IFBB Bikini Pro Champion Brina Martinez, and I take ZMA5 to make sure that I get the zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B6 needed to keep my immune system healthy and snack strong.
Now, you mentioned Dazn announcing this Canelo fight being on pay-per-view. A lot of fans not happy with that. What do you make of like the backlash from the fans being angry about that?
I haven't seen too much. I mean, I think I understand that people go back 4 years and say Dazn said that they weren't going to do pay-per-view. Well, fast forward 4 years. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Canelo Alvarez's stock has got higher and higher and higher. He's making a lot more money than he used to make. He's much more of a star now. And you're competing against platforms that are offering the same pay-per-view model. So it's very difficult. You have to say to yourself, do you lose the race for these superstars? And I'm only talking about one fighter probably in the UK, which is AJ, and one fighter in the US, which is Canelo. Or do you offer a pay-per-view model to bring him to Dazn? And the latter is what you have to do because you want to bring the biggest star in the sport to your platform. The subscription model doesn't change, the value doesn't change. They're going to invest in bigger fights and bigger fight nights. But unfortunately, to win the race for Canelo Alvarez, this is the model that you have to use. And they'd much rather bring him to Dazn under that model than not bring him at all.
Because the whole thing with Dazn was what you mentioned, the multi-million-dollar campaign, pay-per-view's dead, and it was to get pay-per-view caliber fights for a monthly subscription, and now it's those pay-per-view caliber fights they have to pay extra for.
No, it's not. Only one with one guy, which is Canelo Alvarez. And
there was mention from Oscar, Ryan, and Kambosos, if that happens, would be pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think what's important is that they have the functionality to be able to do that for special one-off fights. Still, the model in the UK and the US is to have an unrivaled schedule, global schedule, for unprecedented value for money. Big fights. They're not looking, we're under no pressure from Dazn, give us some pay-per-views. Exactly the opposite. Give us great fights as part of our normal schedule. Canelo Alvarez, the one-off. In time, Ryan Garcia, if he becomes a superstar, will he go on pay-per-view on Dazn? Up to Dazn, up to Golden Boy. But what I know is the only fighter right now that they are looking at to have this model is Canelo Alvarez, because it was the only way, to be honest with you, the deal would work. If Fox, if Showtime are offering out Canelo Alvarez at $80 or $90 a pay-per-view and you're not, how do you make that work? How do you make that offer work? So I think, when you weigh it all up, this was an important move for Dazn.
Do you think the actual business model then it's just not working? Like now guys, you guys are in a position like a Showtime. Like you guys are like a Showtime now.
To be honest with you, we are in the best position we've been in. Our subscriber base continues to grow. The brand value of Dazn, obviously when we came into the UK, no one knew who Dazn was. No one knew who Matchroom was. The response that we're getting from fight fans now, I see it on the streets. For people who have come in through Canelo or for other fights like this weekend. You have to look at what's happening outside of Dazn. Pay-per-view fight after pay-per-view fight. Charles Martin against Ortiz, Thurman against Barrios, Tank against Cruz. It's like non-stop pay-per-views. And I think people have had enough. So in the UK, it's the same. The reason that we left Sky is because they wanted to do more pay-per-views that were always questionable. But it was the only way to do those shows. Now, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury against Dillian White, they're pay-per-view and they'll always be pay-per-view. But we want to do less pay-per-views and give people a better schedule as part of their subscription. So the ethos is exactly the same. It's just with one individual right now, this was the way to make it happen.
Can you guarantee that Canelo and AJ are the only ones that go pay-per-view?
No, because it depends on the fight. You could bring a fight, I don't know, a mega fight. Call it, I don't know what a mega fight in boxing is right now. Tyson Fury against AJ beats Usyk, and it's undisputed heavyweight world championship fight. And is that a pay-per-view? Possibly. Everything's case-by-case scenario. There is no strategy from Dazn. We want more pay-per-views. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think it's like, look, Canelo's pay-per-view, but we know what we're doing. We know what we want to deliver for fight fans. But if they want to be competitive on a one-off fight, maybe in the future they have to offer that model as well. But there's no desire or strategy to do. There's two pay-per-views this year at the moment. Canelo Alvarez against Ppv'S, and hopefully Canelo Alvarez against Triple G. That's it. No, I'm talking about on Dazn. Yeah. So that's enough for them, and we move forward with our schedule.
In general, too many pay-per-views, and you are right. To be fair, a lot of those fights that we saw in the last 6 months shouldn't have been on pay-per-view. But I think for fans, the reason why they were on getting Dazn was to avoid those pay-per-view costs.
I don't think so. I think they were doing it because it's an unrivaled global schedule. Agree with you in some respect because, you've got Canelo Alvarez was part of $19.99 a month, and then you've got him boxing for $90 on Showtime. So, of course, but you haven't got to be too bright to understand that. Look at the two models and the money that's being generated. It just can't work because of the size that Canelo Alvarez has got. No longer the deal that he did originally. The money he's making is much more than that now. And the only way you can make that happen is via pay-per-view.
So then is the model flawed then? Because you guys had to, go to pay-per-view in order to be able to get them, as before you were able to get them.
Because we always said, if you look at my quotes, I always said pay-per-view, I believe, is dead at the price point. Back then, most of them were $99.99, and since then, you've seen the price drop considerably. So, we haven't had Canelo Alvarez on the platform since May. We've seen our subscriber base continue to grow with our schedule, and with this schedule coming out now, of course, Gennady Golovkin coming, hopefully Haney against Kambosos, etc., etc. So we're in a better place than ever, and actually the model is definitely not flawed. The model is extremely successful because the subscriber base continues to grow, as does the love from the fight fans for the Dazn product.
Is it the UK sub base or the US sub base? US sub base.
US. But UK is obviously, UK is 6 months in, 7 months in, been incredibly successful there as well. But the US subspace continues to rise. Our viewing figures, I sometimes argue with Dazn because they don't put viewing figures out. But I look at Showtime's viewing figures. I say you should be putting these viewing figures out. But a lot. Bringing a fighter to Dazn, don't forget when you purchase that pay-per-view, you also, if you're not a Dazn subscriber, you also get a month worth of action as well, all the other fight cards. That's going to grow the subscriber base on Dazn, bring new people in to experience the service. And like I said, they had to make a decision. Do we pass on Canelo Alvarez, or do we do it cheaper than everybody else, but with the same model? And that was the decision they made.
What is the sub base? Can you say?
No, I can't. They don't give it. They don't.
You have to have an idea. You guys are like part. Yeah.
No,
what's the sub place in the US?
They don't report the subs base. But when you talk about Showtime viewing figures, all on a par with those numbers. We talk about Haney Lopez Diaz numbers, Lopez against Kambosos numbers, big numbers, and it's been incredibly successful. It has to be, otherwise it wouldn't be here. It's 4 years in now. And they made a lot of mistakes early on, so did we. We had to overpay because there was no brand name. There was everyone was saying, if you fight on Dazn, who's heard of Dazn? And we had to overpay talent to fight on Dazn. Now we don't. Now it's a straight race between PBC, Matchroom and Top Rank with regards to who you go for. And in the USA, it's without doubt the strongest market at the moment for Dazn in boxing.
So the price of the pay-per-view with the discount, but with people that come, the subscribers that are staying or that have stayed, it's like they're not really getting a discount, right? Because you guys are adding, you get a month free, but for the subscribers, we already have the subscription service.
As always with pay-per-view, you have a choice to buy that fight or not buy that fight, So you're still getting your month of value, a month of fights, but there's an additional one-off pay-per-view. And it's over to you, as always with pay-per-view, as I've said in the UK for many years, we're going to deliver you value for the pay-per-view. Hopefully you come along and enjoy the experience. If not, we respect that, and on we go.
In general, too many pay-per-views, in your opinion?
In general, yeah, without doubt. But Canelo's different. I don't think anyone ever moans at a Canelo Alvarez pay-per-view.
There was some, like that Yildirim. Well, that wasn't a pay-per-view, but some opponents are like, nah.
Well, when are you talking about? The last pay-per-view of Canelo Alvarez was Caleb Plant for the Undisputed.
No, fair. I was...
With Gennady Golovkin.
Yeah, I was referring to opponents, but you are right. We're talking about the fights they put on pay-per-view,
Yeah, so I don't think anyone... But look, I don't... when we talk... Ortiz, Charles Martin was just a weird one. But Thurman Barros and things like that, and Tank, I don't hold it against Heyman for doing them on pay-per-view, because if the broadcaster... Yeah, but can you? If you're talking about Thurman Barros doing what was reported, 50,000 buys, 60,000 buys, something as small as that.
You probably know more.
But I don't understand how the money's generated, but on buys like that, and actually it devalues, because then you're thinking about it and you're thinking, wow, only 50,000 people in the US watched that fight. And you're sort of limiting the audience, trying a model that you think will generate the money, then it doesn't generate the money, and it's like a vicious circle. But if the broadcaster won't invest in that fight, or they don't have the rights fees to afford it, it's the only model. It was the same for me in the UK with Sky. I had to put fights on pay-per-view because the rights fees weren't big enough. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, like Anthony Joshua, always pay-per-view. You know, it's just a model. So that debate will always go on. The best way to describe it is, you know, for one-off superstars, you will every now and again have to buy a pay-per-view. And, you know, him against Bivol is going to be an outstanding fight.
It leads to the bigger conversation, and I hate to even say this because I feel like as fighters they should get as much as they can get, but are they a bit overpaid then if they can't be on networks?
Many fighters are overpaid. But I don't like saying that because it's such a tough sport. But at the same time, I can tell you, because there are certain fighters that we've worked with that are vastly overpaid because they don't deliver on the audience numbers. And that is the absolute clear-cut science in terms of whether a fighter is worth that value. Do you know what I mean? Viewership and subscription numbers for us on Dazn. Bums on seats, ticket sales as well. But it's very easy to establish and determine whether a fighter is worth that money. And I think it's a common knowledge that many fighters in this market are vastly overpaid, but at the same time, good luck to them, because it's a really tough sport, and get your money while you can.
So is the whole business just screwed up? Like, was Dana White right when he said, like, hey, it's impossible to make money coming in here?
His margins are, you know, are a lot wider than the margins involved in boxing, but he has a very, very good business and a solid business model. That's why sometimes, you know, when we talk about, fans like to talk about politics and it's like the purse bid. Like, so fans love a purse bid, don't they? And if I lose a purse bid at a certain amount, I'm very happy to lose that purse bid because that's the value of the fight. And I know the maths, and that's something that as a business we're very good at. But then it's like, Hearn, you lost the purse bid. It's like, good. I'm glad I lost the purse bid because that was the max I was willing to pay for that fight. And you have to keep your wits about you. You can't act on ego in business and just go, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to win this purse bid, and I'm going to be. And then you do the fight. I mean, look at Top Rank and Terence Crawford. The money they must have lost on Terence Crawford on those pay-per-views, Crawford against Khan, you know, having to pay Terence Crawford such huge money because he's such a great talent. Do you know what I mean? But it does. At what point do you go, do you know what? This isn't working for us as a business. So rather than worry about losing that fighter, at some point, where is it going? You know, and we've got fighters that we've worked with and, you know, who you've spent money on, and it's just like, but you don't want to come up publicly like Bob does and shame him in an interview on ESPN. But I understand Bob's frustration as well, because sometimes the numbers just don't add up.
I guess what's the solution?
The solution is pay the right money, respect the fighter, but also at the same time, grow the fighter's fan base. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, promote. Don't just say that Terence Crawford's not a draw and he's not worth the money. Make him worth the money. Drive his fan base. Give him more global exposure. Create his profile so that he hits audience numbers, that he drives ticket sales, and then he's worth the money. It's not just, I can't believe I'm paying you this much. You're not worth the money. Make the fighter worth the money. And whenever I offer a fighter a deal, a long-term deal, I base that number on the fact that we're going to be putting the work in as a team to grow that fighter together. Because if you don't grow those fighters, those numbers are going to become like just bad numbers. So you've got to invest in a fighter, but you've also got to invest in the profile of a fighter.
And it takes two, too. The fighter has to put in their work also to grow their fan base and all that.
We're promoters. That's our job.
Promoters don't really promote anymore. That's
It's
bad. People, they call themselves promoter and they don't promote.
Yeah, good. Yeah, true. I do. Yeah.
Hey Eddie, just on a lasting thing, you know, what would you say to the fan that is a little worried that, you know, with their DAZN subscribers? And
I say DAZN provides unrivaled value for money on a global schedule that is better than any boxing platform by a mile. Yes, every now and again, for Canelo Alvarez, you may have to buy a pay-per-view. We'll give you an incredible show, an incredible fight, and keep supporting DAZN.
Thank you so much for watching this video, and make sure to subscribe for more videos of your favorite fighters over here on Ppv'S, and give us a follow online as well at Ppv'S on Twitter and on Instagram. We appreciate it, guys.